Hillcrest Manor was a grand old mansion that had been abandoned for years, shrouded in mystery and dark rumors. It had been built in the late century by a wealthy industrialist who had spared no expense in creating a luxurious home for his family. The mansion boasted towering columns, ornate moldings, and intricate stonework. Its sprawling gardens were a wonder to behold, with winding paths, tranquil ponds, and colorful flower beds. But the mansion's beauty had been marred by a tragic history. The family who had lived in the mansion had suffered a series of devastating losses. The patriarch of the family, a man named Henry, had been a ruthless businessman who had made his fortune by exploiting his workers. He had alienated his wife and children with his cruel and selfish behavior. One day Henry's wife had had enough. She had packed her bags and left the mansion, taking their children with her. Henry had been furious, consumed with rage and grief. He had become increasingly unstable, spending his days locked in his study, brooding and plotting. One night he had snapped. He had gone on a rampage through the mansion, wielding a shotgun and killing his children one by one. His wife had returned to the mansion in a desperate attempt to stop him, but he had shot her as well. Then he had turned the gun on himself, ending his own life and the lives of his family. Since then, the mansion had remained empty, its rooms filled with the ghosts of its past. Despite its ominous reputation, the mansion had attracted the attention of a wealthy couple named John and Mary. They had recently inherited a large fortune and were looking for a new home. They had heard about Hillcrest Manor's history and were intrigued by its grandeur and its haunted reputation. John and Mary arrived at the mansion with a team of builders and decorators, ready to restore it to its former glory. The workers were intimidated by the mansion's imposing exterior and its eerie silence, but they pushed ahead with their renovations. They worked tirelessly for weeks, replacing rotting wood, fixing leaky pipes, and repainting walls. As the work progressed, strange things began to happen. Tools would go missing, doors would slam shut on their own, and eerie whispers could be heard in the halls. The workers became increasingly uneasy, and some of them refused to come back to the mansion. John and Mary were undeterred. They were convinced that the strange occurrences were just the quirks of an old house. They moved into the mansion with their children, determined to make it their home. But the haunting became more intense. Mary would often wake up in the middle of the night, convinced that she had heard someone calling her name. She would see ghostly figures flitting through the halls, their eyes fixed on her. John dismissed her fears, chalking it up to the creaks and groans of an old house. One night, Mary woke up to find the ghostly figure of a woman standing at the foot of her bed. The woman had long, tangled hair and a look of despair on her face. Mary screamed, and the figure vanished into thin air. John and Mary decided to hire a team of paranormal investigators to help them rid the house of its ghosts. The investigators arrived at the mansion armed with cameras, recorders, and other equipment. They immediately sensed a strong presence of paranormal activity in the house. They set up their equipment and began their investigation. As they moved through the mansion, they encountered strange occurrences at every turn. Doors would open and close on their own, and unexplained noises could be heard in every room. The investigators picked up EOP's electronic voice phenomena on their recorders, capturing the whispers and moans of unseen entities. As the investigation went on, the paranormal activity escalated. The investigators witnessed objects flying across the room and felt icy cold spots in otherwise warm rooms. They saw apparitions of a man with a shotgun and the ghostly figures of the murdered children. The investigators were able to make contact with the spirits of the murdered family. They learned that Henry, the patriarch, was still consumed with rage and was intent on driving anyone who entered the mansion insane. He had enlisted the help of demon creatures that roamed the forest surrounding the mansion, hoping to use their dark powers to keep the mansion haunted forever. The investigators were horrified by what they had learned, but they refused to give up. They spent several days conducting a ritual to banish the demon creatures and the spirits of the murdered family from the mansion. The ritual involved burning sage, reciting incantations, and using holy water. As the ritual progressed, the investigators felt the presence of the spirits grow weaker and weaker. They saw the demon creatures flee into the forest, screeching in terror. Finally, the spirits of the murdered family dissipated, leaving the mansion peaceful and quiet. John and Mary were overjoyed. They had their dream home, and they were finally free of the hauntings that had plagued them. They thanked the investigators profusely and vowed to never forget their bravery and expertise. Years passed, and Hillcrest Manor remained a peaceful and happy home. John and Mary raised their children there, and their grandchildren visited often. The mansion's gardens bloomed with color and life, and the mansion itself glowed with the warmth of a happy family. But there were still whispers in the halls, and some visitors swore they could see ghostly figures flitting through the gardens at night. And while the mansion's dark past remained a part of its history, John and Mary knew that they had conquered the demons that had once haunted the mansion, and that it was now truly a place of love and light.